Good afternoon, members, and welcome to today's Insights Innovation webinar. Today, we're joined by Melinda Duffy, who is the Head of Product and Partnerships at oOh, who's going to be presenting to you today Own Summer with oOh. So I'll pass it over to you, Mel. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It's such a delight to see you all online. I know that lunch is fast approaching, so hopefully I can make this really energetic and fastly paced so you can pop off and enjoy lunch shortly. So as the girls mentioned, my name is Mel. I'm the Head of Product and Partnerships here at oOh, and we're going to spend some time today looking at summer and the opportunities summer presents for brands, particularly in the realms of out of home. We're going to look at the summer state of mind and how that impacts how we're feeling and what we're doing over the summer months. So, as I'm sure you'd all appreciate, summer is out of home's biggest moment in Australia. More people are out and about than any other season. Whether that's taking holidays, shopping, dining out, watching live sport, or just making the most of summer with friends and family. As I'm sure many of us would agree, it's our season. And it's when out of home truly shines. Our inventory becomes even more powerful, reaching people when they're active, engaged, and really receptive. And selfishly, I love it because you can't skip it, you can't scroll past it or turn it off. It's right there in the real world where many of our audiences are. But here's the disconnect, and I'm sure many of you can attest to this. While audiences go out, media budgets in out of home, interestingly, do pull back. With linear TV and radio ratings shutting down for summer, I'm well aware that advertisers generally follow suit, leaving quite a substantial opportunity on the table. And I'm sure many of us would agree today that it's just because audiences step outside doesn't mean our clients should stop speaking to them. In fact, it's a really strong opportunity for us all to lean in. So, with summer being out of home's biggest moment, why do some brands still switch off? So while you ponder that thought today, we're going to explore these 4 things. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about how Aussies move, spend and think over the summer months. And there's some really rich research in here and you'll all have access to the presentation after. So I hope it comes in handy. You're going to look at why you should choose oOh this summer. And that's me really showing you how our network gets around some of these critical data points that we explore in section 1. And then section 3, I'm going to spend some time looking at outcomes you can expect to achieve for your clients. This is some case study work as well as some third-party research from analytic partners. I think it's really important I share that with you versus you hearing from my opinion alone. And then we're also going to look at how we can best support your teams in planning summer with ease this year. And that will be the closing section. So first of all, let's get into it. How are Aussies spending, moving and thinking over such a crucial period? For those of us in New South Wales today, I'm sure you can attest to the great weather. It has changed our mood a little bit. And as early as October, many people do start to shift into that summer mode. That really is driven by warm weather, daylight savings, big events and key retail moments which start to mark that unofficial start of the summer economy. And there's a real reason that summer feels like the season of possibility because psychologically, as I'm sure we might all agree, it is. When the sun's out and the temperature rises, so does our mood. I joked with my team today that we're like little daisies to a degree. Consequently, our levels of happiness, energy and sociability all lift at this time of year, no different to a flower. And summer also means 4 to 5 extra hours of daylight over this period, which inherently does make people more active, more social and more open to new experiences. And these seasonal changes are also amplified by our cultural identity, which is uniquely anchored to the outdoors, and summer really does perpetuate that. So think barbecues, picnics, outdoor play, meals in the beer garden, road trips, and those long afternoons at the beach. These are the things that Aussies are most looking forward to when asked. It's our most social, mobile, and memory-making time of year. And many people, around 71% actually, say it's when their most memorable experiences are made. And that's really special. And if I reflect on my own experiences, that's me thinking about all those summer road trips as a child, driving from Bankstown all the way to the Gold Coast as a child. I still have fond memories about that, which is pretty cool. And when we feel better and we have these beautiful memories being formed, we also buy more. And what we're seeing is that Aussies spend $166 billion in summer, which is pretty substantial. And we spend 2.9 billion more on discretionary items in the summer months versus other seasons. So what we start to see is that summer doesn't just lift the temperature, it actually lifts our wallet, so to speak, and our intent to spend, which I'll come back to a little later on in the prezzo. And this expenditure is also amplified by movement. So summer, as I've touched on very gently, is a very mobile season for us here in Australia. Bookings jump around 160% in the week after Boxing Day, and 87% of those trips happen in January. And that's taken from Westpac DataX data. And while we move, we also spend. So in key holiday destinations, spending across tourism actually rises by up to 130%. And holiday trips jump 44% along with that, which is really fueled by that irresistible urge to escape. But it's actually not just holidays either. Visits to friends and family actually goes up by 24%. And I'm sure if we reflect on our own behaviours, many of us would agree with that. And what we also see is that airports fill really fast with hotspots like Brisbane, Cairns, Maroochydore, and the Gold Coast all leading the way. But interestingly, after Christmas, Melbourne dominates that flight travel piece, with bookings going up by 19%. And that is really fueled by draw cards like the oOh and the F1. But speaking of travel and my loose reference earlier to Duffy family road trips, one of the biggest shifts we see over summer is that mass exodus from city life into those regional and coastal areas. And across some of our top coastal destinations, spending jumps by 76 million, which is really substantial. 3.3 million Aussies travel regionally, helping fuel that. And at summer, if we look at Westpac data, what we also see is there's 3.7 million more visits to petrol stations over that season versus winter, which is a lot of refueling, as I'm sure you'd imagine, a lot of highway billboard opportunities alongside of that. But interestingly, it's not just people passing through. What we also see is people are packing up for longer stays in those locations, injecting millions into economies across every state. And we've talked about this big holiday travel, but if I also think about my own behaviours selfishly, what about those everyday getaways? Now that I don't have weekend sport as a parent, it actually does free up a lot more time for us as a family to do little trips, driving up to Palm Beach for the weekend, heading over to Bondi as an example, going up the coast. And what we also see over summer is I'm not alone. There's about 40 million day trips at this time of year, which fuels around an $8 billion day trip economy. And as you'd all imagine, the day trip variety is endless thanks to a lot of what our country has to offer. So we often see that around 78% of Aussies say they really love coastal drives at this time of year, 54% head for national parks, and others opt for long highway stretches or outback roads. And every journey, as you'd imagine, means more stops and more spend in those locations. So it's really clear to me is that summer isn't just our most mobile season, it also brings with it exceptional commercial activity. And what we see is there's around 16 million more transactions in summer versus winter. And you heard me say on the opening slide that it was actually 2.9 billion more on discretionary items in summer. We actually see significant lifts in non-grocery categories because my first thought was, gosh, surely that's fueled by grocery alone. It's actually not. So some very quick examples. Jewelry spend goes up 31%, and office and education spend goes up by 26% as people start to gear up for the year ahead. So what you start to see here is there's like these seasonal shifts in behaviour that are driven by that higher mobility, but also that optimism and that indulgence piece. And if I think about indulgence, there is no season that tempts us more and certainly tempts me more than the summer sales season. So what you're looking at on screen now is some stats looking at this key sales period over summer, starting with Black Friday. So across Black Friday to Cyber Monday in 2024, a whopping $8.7 billion was spent across 4 days. That's a jump of 7.3% from the previous year, and really substantial if I think about that, given the fact that we're in an economy at that point in time where we're starting to see a series of interest rate rises, which also continued into 2025. What we also see at this point in time is we're not just spending lots of money, we're spending at pace. We spend around $1.5 million a minute. And I joked with my guys here, anyone that saw me traveling with my oOh team last week at Sydney Airport, I bought this ridiculous Camilla dress, and I think I did that in all of 2 minutes. So I can certainly attest to that spending behaviour. What we also see is that 58% of Aussies don't just impulse purchase like me. They actually use Black Friday sales as an example to get ahead. And that's behaviour that's been recorded by Rate City. Along with this sale period, though, there's also the 4-week Boxing Day sale period, which takes the spending momentum into that New Year piece. What we saw in January 2025 is that spend hit $37 billion, which again was actually an increase of 3.8% from the year before. Really interesting if I do reflect upon some of those pressures we had financially as a country at this time. So what we start to see based upon that is summer is one of the most commercially powerful times of year, creating a really strong opportunity for brands to connect with customers who are actively spending at that time, and also those who are thinking about the year ahead. But it's not just about what we're buying. Summer also changes drastically the way in which we socialise. So bars and clubs on average see a $196 million boost with 1.8 million more extra transactions. Along with this, what we also see is an exorbitant increase in grocery spend. So as you'd imagine, longer days, public holidays starts to mean more reasons to entertain at home. Supermarkets see around $600 million increase in spend over the season, with around 7.7 million more supermarket transactions. And all of this starts to point to a clear seasonal change in behaviour. We're not only spending more freely, but we're also spending, if I reflect on these stats alone, to create those special moments to come together with family and friends. And nowhere is that more evident, I have to say, certainly in our household, is the relationship of sport within that. So sport being uniquely Australian and uniquely in the way in which it brings people together. It's a part of our DNA. This year alone, we've seen 220,000 tickets be sold at the pre-release for the upcoming Ashes, and a further 311 were actually sold at full release, which is huge. Along with this, we're anticipating another massive Boxing Day test. 2024 drew around 370,000 fans to the MCG, And this year's oOh welcomed 1.1 million people to Melbourne. But interestingly, along with that, tipped $565 million into the Victorian economy. And when the last set is played, if I think about my own behaviours, people spill out onto the streets, the retail centres, the bars and beyond, really spending, living large and enjoying those moments in out of home, which to me means audiences aren't just moving, they're spending time in these high traffic locations that are really rich with out of home inventory, and outdoor advertising really does resonate within this. So you can see 3 stats on screen now that speak to this. 59% of people say out of home, fits into their environment much better than other channels. 60% say I find it an enjoyable way to connect with brands, and 95% of our purchases are emotionally led. So if I think about that in the context of summer, it starts to suggest that summer's a real sweet spot for out-of-home effectiveness. As I opened up this section with, we're happier, we're little daisies to a degree. There's a real psychology in how we show up. We move, connect, and indulge more than any other time of year, which creates a really strong environment for out-of-home advertising to work very hard. So why choose us this summer? I'm going to show you how our channels start to show up in the context of summer. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to show you a couple of case studies that start to prove out some of that effectiveness. So firstly, why us? I think we have a network that I feel really confident means your brand will be a part of that unmissable summer moments. We are in all metro cities. We're in all regional cities and hubs. We're across the most arterials, the most freeways, the most visited shopping centres, the most iconic beaches, the most travel destinations, the most sporting locations. So as Aussies travel, shop, play, and live more over summer, only oOh is there every step of the way. And I'm going to show you how. So over summer, our connection begins when millions of people start to travel by air. We're located at the busiest airports across the country, from Brisbane to Darwin, Melbourne to Newcastle and Sydney. And we're not just in the terminals, we offer brands exclusive access to the Qantas Lounge network in the 5 cap markets, plus Canberra, which I joke about, but our little boy is a Canberra fanatic. He loves it. And all of this is a really high engagement, high impact point with those frequent flyers. Plus, as many of you who have travelled would have seen, we're on board too across domestic and international in-flight entertainment and Wi-Fi, which really means you're able to buy that Qantas passenger and capitalise on those high dwell, high engagement premium environments that Qantas offers. But if I reflect back on growing up as a child, let's say your dad wasn't loading you all up on a lovely flight and he was putting you in the family station wagon, we're also able to connect. We have a really extensive billboard network which reaches many, many Australians. We represent over 85% of the regional billboard market with a presence in 14 regional cities. And what does that mean? Well, that means we cover every major arterial, highway and CBD, delivering impact at scale and building the strongest 1+ reach in market. And over summer, as you heard me say earlier in the deck, that reach goes up exponentially thanks to those additional people traveling regionally, which equates to around 3.3 million people. So it's helping you reach those locals, but also that influx of holiday makers. Alongside this, regional out of home is also a really strong way to boost ROI. Some of you might have seen our recent billboard piece where we talked about the effectiveness of regional when added to a metro campaign. And what we see is, on average, there's around 10% increase in ROI when regional is added versus that metro only piece. And if I move beyond billboards and airports and start to think about stuff that I love, being shopping, our business truly dominates. We're in the most visited, high quality retail centres in the country, and they spend more in our centres than any other. We have the greatest influence on total consumer spend. As a business, our representation is responsible for 46 cents in every dollar spent in an Australian shopping centre, and that's taken from Location IQ. What that represents is a turnover of around 79 billion. And that spend is complemented, as you'd imagine, by an exceptional increase in footfall. Over summer, our centres see around 200,000 more people come into centres, which is really substantial. And if I joke about that being living with a CFO, that's certainly us, because I know he doesn't love turning the air conditioning on. So me going to a shopping centre is definitely one way to keep cool. But beyond these flagship centres, our scale and quality is really unmatched. And what do I mean by that? We as a business dominate the top 500 shopping centres with a presence, as you can see on screen now, in 266 of the prestigious top 500 nationwide. So what that equates to is around 53% of the highest turnover, highest footfall environments, which gives your clients the ability to connect in really strong environments where people are spending time across those summer months. But if I move beyond retail and think about some other places that we love to spend time in summer, the beaches is certainly one of them. And our street network is located within 1 kilometre of over 100 beaches nationwide. So that, as you'd imagine, that means we're present where the crowds are, we're there where audiences are, and we're in some of those really rich, iconic locations. For example, our recent contract wins mean we're really strong. And in Sydney, we own the beaches there, from Waverley's Bondi, which has on average 50,000 people a day, to Bronte. We're also across Woollahra's Council Rose Bay. And if I think about my own locations, the northern beaches from Manly to Palm Beach. So we've got those Sydney beaches really covered, and they're really substantial beaches at that. But our network doesn't stop there. I know there's lots of people on the call today from different locations. As an example, we cover iconic beaches nationwide from Glenelg in SA, as well as Cottesloe in WA and beyond, which means we're really uniquely positioned to connect with Aussies during those key summer moments in those beautiful beach locations. And you heard me talk earlier about the power of summer and sport in particular, and how much sport defines our summer for us as a country. We surround 82 professional sporting grounds nationwide, places like oOh and Allianz in Sydney, to the MCG, Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne Park in Victoria, and the Gabba in Brisbane. And when we talk about sport, as I touched on briefly earlier, Melbourne really is the beating heart thanks to the Boxing Day test at the MCG and the AO before we move into the F1. So these iconic events really do spark mass commuter movement flowing into these areas. And our rail network connecting all these locations moves on average an extra 10 million people during summer, while our street furniture and our billboard network captures their attention as they're moving to and from those stadiums if they're not commuting in a traditional sense. So what it means is we're not just touching the sporting moment itself, we're dominating the build-up, the commute, and the celebration. And I think I feel really confident in terms of where that passion and attention go and crowds go, we're with them all the way. So you can probably get a sense from what I've just shared briefly is that when we talk about our ability to impact in summer, it's actually not just about this one environment. And I know you guys will be talking to your clients about this all the time. It's actually about that complete network experience, that surrounding them with a real omni-channel lens. And we're thinking about that in the sense of out of home. If I look at airports, we're there when those summer journeys begin. Regional billboards, we're across every highway and arterial as we move to and from those holiday and weekend trips. Retail, we're in the most visited shopping centres in the country where the most money is spent. From a beaches standpoint, we're impacting crowds, those really iconic summer destinations. And if I reflect on those summer and entertainment precincts, we're surrounding them as they move to and from those locations. So with a network that reaches 99% of Metro Australians every week, if I just look at move-based data, only oOh surrounds Australians nationwide, wherever summer takes them, every journey, every destination, and every moment. So we see there's this real rich opportunity to target people, and I'm sure there's an acknowledgement as I'm speaking around that spend and that mindset piece. But how effective could this truly be? So I'm going to show you a video in a moment from Joanne Fu from Analytic Partners, who's looking at the effectiveness of out of home in comparison to other channels and the effectiveness of out of home overall at this time of year. And then after I play that video, we're going to spend a brief moment unpacking that a little further before I show you 2 case studies. If for any reason you can't hear the video, just message in the chat, but as the girls mentioned, this will be uploaded and you will be able to access after, just in case it doesn't play. So here we go. Awesome. Hopefully you guys all heard that okay. But if you haven't heard it, and just to summarize, what Joanne's talked about is this real shift in media effectiveness. What we see from November through to February is the strength of out-of-home performance, and it really outperforms at this point in time, delivering on average a 2.6% increase in effectiveness compared to the annual average. So while other major channels, as I'm sure many of us would appreciate based on our experience, like TV and digital dip, out of home lifts performance. So it's really cutting through at a time when there's immense opportunity. And along with that, what we also see from some of our brand outcomes work is that it also delivers. So if we look at brand outcome studies, what we see is there's 121% uplift in people saying they would recommend the brand as a consequence of seeing out-of-home advertising at this time of year. So what that says to me is that's advocacy at scale and proof that out of home in summer doesn't just get noticed. It's actually creating stronger connections, loyalty, and growth. And it's a channel that delivers really measurable impact in both ROI and in that brand love. So I want to add a bit more color just by looking at two very brief case studies, and really happy to, of course, share further. If you guys need, do just reach out to our team and we can happily do so. This first one here is from Grey Goose Vodka, and they entered summer in 2024 with a really single-minded ambition. What they wanted to do was be the first drink, the go-to drink for the occasion and the one that people started with. So with that in mind, they utilised our retail, rail and billboard networks as some of those channels I've just spoken about from a summer mindset. And they looked at connecting in a really mass fashion. And what they saw was pretty exceptional. They saw a 21% increase in buyers as a consequence of the campaign, 34% uplift in transaction, and a 14% increase in brand penetration year on year, which was really substantial. Another really good example is from Swarovski, and I was joking with the girls earlier. This is one that I fell victim to, buying a necklace that I didn't need, and I probably should have worn it today. And this campaign was designed to really increase that consideration over the holiday period and drive awareness amongst premium gift shoppers and also people like me. They were really after new buyers who had not engaged with the brand before, and they used a combination of our retail and street furniture network. Again, really strong results. They saw a 197% increase in buyers. There was 89% of people who were new to the brand, so a lot of Mel Duffies. And what that equated to was a 205% increase in transactions, all over a really critical period for Swarovski when jewelry sales were also up by 16%. So they were able to really grab that momentum, which was really substantial. Being an ex-media agency person, it would be amiss of me to not talk about the importance of creative at this time too. And having shown you two really strong case studies, what speaks to me here is the importance of creativity within those, because creativity, as many of us know, based upon our experience, is a very strong driver of out-of-home effectiveness. It actually accounts for 41% of the out-of-home ROI, as we can see from analytic partners' work. What analytic partners have also shared with us is the importance of that creative relative to overall success beyond some of the results you've just seen. So if I look at out-of-home impact, if we utilise video, we see a 2.5 times increase in campaign effectiveness and impact. If I look at contextually relevant creative, we see a 6% uplift in brand sales. And if we look at the utilisation of creative variation by location, we see a 46% increase in buyers, which is really strong. Many of you have probably interacted with our in-house creative team known as Polly, and they play a really vital role in supporting clients and supporting your clients' creative agencies and making sure that creative really sings an out of home and does justice to the beautiful media work that you all deliver, and it unlocks even greater effectiveness, as I hope you can see by some of those results. So to bring us home, the question is, how do you plan and buy really effectively to unlock these benefits? I'm well aware of the strength of all of your proprietary tools, your strategic and planning expertise internally. I'm going to show you very briefly just some things that are available to your teams to really support you in implementing campaigns really quickly over such a busy time of year. So as I've mentioned, we've got a really strong network that I hope does give you a sense we can impact at scale this summer. Domestic flights jumped more than 40% over that period, and our airport, Qantas lounges and in-flight screens become really powerful touch points. Along with this, 3 million Aussies hit the highways for regional breaks and coastal breaks, and we've got 85% coverage of regional billboards, plus great strength in metro. So we're right there on the journey with them. Summer is peak retail, or as I like to say, peak shoppies. Almost half of every retail dollar is spent in an oOh centre, and our footprint across those high spend, high footfall locations means we can really be there and help you guys capture shoppers when spend matters most. And then from a beaches, stadiums and entertainment precincts, which all see exceptional increase in footfall, we're there. And only oOh covers, as I mentioned, 1,100 suburbs, 104 beaches, and 82 sporting grounds with over 10 million summer rail trips. So, whether you're flying, driving, shopping, or simply living large, we're there, and we're able to be there across all these really big summer moments. Further to this, our network is amplified by programmatic trading. It's available across more than 3,500 of our panels. And as I know you guys are well aware, based on your expertise, it gives you that ability to buy quickly, to adapt quickly, and to implement buying tactics that support real strong agility and market. What you're seeing on screen now is an example from Priceline. They utilize programmatic in the lead up to Christmas as well as Boxing Day promotions, which you're seeing on screen, before shifting out. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Sorry, don't know why I did that. Layout. Oh, I'm just going to stop sharing. Sorry, guys. 2 seconds. I just did something very weird. Don't know why. We're going to share again. Forgive me. Okay. Sorry about that. Clicked fat fingers. Awesome. So you get a sense of programmatic and what's possible. They shifted into really strong new year, new me messaging, which you're seeing on screen now. So what we're talking to your teams about, knowing all of this, is that with a network that's really vast, these really key summer moments that I've just alluded to, we have a tool called oOh Explore, where our guys are able to map out any point of interest, along with utilizing Coles 360 and Westpac DataX data to look at biographic behavior. We can merge those two data points and serve to a really strong solution that surrounds an audience in key locations. This is just 5 examples on screen that are ready to go now. That doesn't take our team much time at all to support you guys when you're planning and buying against these critical summer moments. So that was a journey. And apart from my fat finger slide clicking moment, I hope I've given you a really fast tour of how people are moving, spending, and thinking differently in the summer season. We've seen as a team how their behaviours shift, more trips, more spend, greater openness to new experiences. And summer, I hope you get a sense, is when out of home delivers its really strong ROI, when attention peaks and when audiences are really engaged. And we're able to surround all of those moments, as I've touched upon, unlike any other business. And I think our network is really embedded in the Aussie summer in a really unique way. But I opened the prezzo a little bit provocatively, and I'm sure many of you are laughing because you feel this too. Too many brands go dark as we all approach our summer shutdown. Campaigns pause, budgets switch off, and there's prime audiences that are really left untouched. So I hope as you go into lunch, I can leave you with a small challenge. The summer economy is on. I'm certainly on, shopping myself silly, like I need an excuse. Out of home is on, and the only question I'm sure many of us have is will your clients be willing to be on and be a part of these beautiful, unmissable summer moments? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mel. That was not only very insightful, great use of data, but I'm very excited for summer now too. So thank you for today's presentation, oOh. That concludes today's Insights Innovation webinar. As Nikki mentioned up front, this will be recorded and placed on our YouTube channel, and we will circulate the presentation. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Bye.